Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Payroll Chaos to Payroll Clarity with hh2. My name is ISV and Alliances Manager here at Fast Business Solutions. Just to let you know, everyone is in listen-only mode for today's webinar. But if you have any questions, please use the Q&A feature in the GoToWebinar control panel. So today, we're joined by two industry veterans, Dennis Doherty and Vincent Pate from hh2. Welcome, gentlemen. And today, as we know, I mean, payroll for a lot of people is a weekly headache. But if your team is managing manual time entry, disconnected systems, or complex compliance and reporting, chances are you're spending too much time and you're losing accuracy in the process. And the good people here at hh2 are here to show us a better way. So, Dennis, Vincent, I'll let you guys take it away.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, and we really appreciate Bass coming in and letting us present this today. Please feel free to ask questions as we get going. When we see them come across, we'll try to answer them. But if we're unable to get to the questions at the end, we'll open it up for questions then too, and we'll answer anything that hasn't been answered at that point. And so, what we're talking about today is kind of the chaotic mess that can sometimes happen with payroll. And so, but before that, we're going to skip past this. Let me kind of cover what we're going to be going into today. So, very first thing, we're going to do quick introductions and tell you a little bit about hh2, and then we're going to go into kind of the challenges that you're facing being in the construction industry, and then how there are different time tracking processes that most companies use, and then the impacts that you might face because of inefficient time tracking. And then we're going to go into a solutions overview, supported construction ERPs, and do a live demo. And so from here, I'm going to go straight into my introduction. So I've spent 16 years with hh2, helping construction companies streamline their back office processes. I've worn multiple hats across the company for sales, marketing, support, implementation, and more. One of the things that I really enjoy telling people is that I've helped throughout these years, I've helped the back office be able to streamline their processes, allowing them to actually go home and spend more time with their families. And so from there, I'll let Vincent give an introduction about himself. So Vincent.
Yeah, hi everyone, Vincent Pate. I've been in the industry and construction accounting software since 2006 when I started work at Sage dealing with Master Builder at the time, and have stayed within it this entire length, working with 100 Contractor, 300 CRE, Intacct, you name it. Here at hh2, I handle our entire product suite of many different products, but as Dennis mentioned today, we're here to discuss how we can help with that payroll clarity.
Okay, so to give you a quick introduction to hh2, so over 20 years ago, a GC here in Utah had wanted to increase the transparency between the office and the field, and they started with payroll. They wanted to see what their guys were doing out in the field. They wanted to see it in almost real time so that they could accurately track all of the activities that were going on out in the field. And so they hired someone on board with the plan that they were going to build this for them, and that was Devin Doherty. So he came in and built the initial solution for hh2 Remote Payroll, and we've been going on that ever since. Since that time, we've added multiple additional solutions. We started by adding in HR and some additional processes around field reports, and eventually moving into field service and then moving into AP. And so in 2021, we had around 3,000 construction companies across the US and Canada that were our customers. Now, and that's when a private equity firm called Capstreet came in and purchased the majority share of hh2. Now, since that point, we've added an additional 2,000 customers to that. And that equates to around 125,000 annual users that are inside our system using it on a daily basis. And so what that should give you is, number one, knowledge to know that our system is constantly being used, it's constantly being tested. Whenever there's issues, we roll out updates. And so it's a tried and trusted system for over 20 years now. So let's get into kind of what makes payroll so chaotic with the with construction. So with small businesses, it typically takes anywhere between 1 to 5 hours a week on payroll related tasks. You have fluctuating workforces and seasonal work, so you have to train people in how to do things. In addition, you're dealing with different pay rates and overtime. In addition to that, you also work with cost codes, and you want to make sure that all tasks are cost coded out for future benefits. And then you also have to deal with any benefits that you have and union considerations, and then any safety, compliance, subcontractors, so on and so forth. With medium to large enterprises, it can take days to get payroll, just do the time collection and attendance for payroll. You also have to deal with multi-state projects and tax considerations. A lot of times you're looking at prevailing wage, especially if you're doing a lot of federal work. And then you've got record keeping and software systems that you're using, in addition to the training and onboarding for any processes that you currently have in place. And so what that equates to is, we'll go over a few of these different processes. And the first is more of a manual paper timesheets. So manual, let's say your guys are filling out their timesheets. The problem when they're filling out their own timesheets is that, number one, you have to get those back into the office. That becomes the first issue. And then if they're doing it by hand, then your guys have to be expert on, reading the handwriting for a bunch of field employees, which can be difficult in and of itself and can introduce errors into the process. You really have a lack of real-time visibility because sometimes collecting those records may happen just a couple times a week to maybe even just once a week where you're putting them all in. And then there's a bunch of compliance risks that you're dealing with, and there's a bunch of other issues of just simply getting the data in. Who do you have getting the cost codes applied? Is it going to be one of your field managers, and then if your field manager has to apply those, then does he have to see it and do something with it before it gets on? And so there's a big kind of mess around with paper timesheets. Now, the next is if you're doing Excel. So if you're using Excel, it does introduce the ability to streamline the process a little bit, but you're still dealing with a lot of issues. Like number one, the cost codes and everything that's entered into your ERP. How is that synchronizing across to your Excel spreadsheet? And you have to enter it multiple times, which anytime you're doing multiple entry runs the risk of introducing errors into the process as well. And then how often are those codes and everything updated? How often is an employee updated when it comes in? And so you've got a lot of different issues that can once again introduce problems and more chaos to the process. And then the next is other software. So there's a lot of software that claims to support construction, but once a construction company starts looking and getting different pieces of software applied to the process, that's where they start finding if it really works. So do they integrate well with your accounting system? Should be one of the first things you're looking at if you're looking at a different software system. How accurate and how often does everything sync over? If you have a new job or cost code or employee that comes out, how long until they've been added into your ERP does it sync over to your solution so they can be used out in the field? And then do they support everything? Do they support prevailing wage if you're doing any certified payroll? Do they support unions? Do they support shifts? All of those different things can, if they don't support any of those, it normally involves a lot of manual workarounds on your end after all the time has been entered. And anytime there's manual work that has to be done, it once again runs the risk of introducing errors into the process. So a good question to ask yourself is how does your business currently track employee hours and attendance, and what issues are you currently dealing with? And so let's go over some of the impacts of inefficient processes. So the first is you have an increased cost. So automating time and attendance can reduce payroll costs by up to 80%. And then in addition to that, error rates can range from 1 to 8% of your total payroll. And when those errors creep in, you can run into some compliance issues that can then cause problems with you later in fines and other things from the government. And so in addition to that, you have decreased productivity. So time spent on non-productive tasks is normally 2.5 hours daily searching for information or indicating potential productivity loss in manual time tracking. And then there's project delays. Inadequate time tracking contributes to a 14% project failure rate. In compliance risk, if you miss any of the compliance that's needed, you can actually be fined by the government. And over 322 million in back wages were collected from the Department of Labor in 2019 due to labor standard violations. And then general impacts. Number one, if you're not paying your employees on time, or if it's late, or if it's always late, then it can really have an effect on morale and turnover. And if you have any employees that turn over, the cost of replacing employees anywhere from 1/2 to 2 times that employee's annual salary. So what challenges do you face with your current time tracking and attendance process? And so that's where we want to introduce to you Remote Payroll. It's our time tracking, attendance, coding, and reporting solution. And we support multiple ways to get time into the system. We have a wide variety of options available, so you don't have to change your payroll processes all the way, and you don't have to adapt to a new solution. You can more make our solution adapt to what you need it for. And so a good example, at TUG last year, we actually had a person by the name of Lee Prey. She came up and told us this, that they were hand entering over 75,000 points of data each week to process payroll. What took them a full week to process payroll has been reduced now to a single day. And so with that, I want to turn the time over to Vincent. So Vincent.
So how hh2 accomplishes our connection with Sage, and again, as I mentioned, I've worked with all the different Sage products. Great thing hh2 also does. So when I say Sage, I mean Sage 100 Contractor, Sage 300 Construction and Real Estate, Sage Intacct, plus many others. So how we're working with these systems is we have a connector that pulls the data continuously from your system as things are changed. So you create a new job, we pull that job in. You set the budget or the estimates for all of the cost codes are in there. We're going to pull those in to make sure that you're only having to code your time to the appropriate cost codes that you should be. Everything on that list is being synced automatically so that you don't have to worry from your end. Did this connect with Sage? Did this not connect with Sage? Have we synced this yet? It's just going to happen behind the scenes. So very simple and easy to get that data over. When it's in the system and you're starting to use hh2's time capture piece, note that you can set this up to match your specific needs. And it's very flexible to the point where you can have crews of people working certain types of jobs and certain types of approval paths for that, while another group could be working in a completely different way. We call that a payroll group in our system. It allows you to assign foremen, all their employees, what jobs they can work, what cost codes that they should be connecting to, and give them the freedom to move those people around. And note that when you need to make any types of approvals, it's going to follow the path. But we also understand that every crew that you have might not be doing the exact same thing. So it's very custom configurable for each group of people in your company. So you're not in a position where because you chose something at implementation that you're stuck with it. You can truly make your system work for you. Now, when we talk about time capture, there are many different ways. As you can see on the screen, there's about 5 typical ways you might have time captured. We want to simplify this, but also give you the option to do whichever one is appropriate for you. A lot of people coming from paper, from Excel spreadsheets, you're used to doing it a specific way. You're capturing a unit of time or a time a day. We now make it to where you could still do all of that for the people in your company that need to. If you want to have a foreman enter their time for their crew and just say, Dennis worked 5 hours doing this, 3 hours doing that, other people did other work, you can. But also, we can now give you the opportunity to let your employees clock in and out right there on their smartphones. That will allow them to say, I started now, and that's when the time clock starts. Obviously, if somebody doesn't have a phone, that's not going to work for them, but that's why we have the ability from a foreman standpoint or a superintendent standpoint to clock in for those employees. We're going to allow for any type of time capture that you're using today and also into the future through our different methodologies there. So that punch clock that I pulled up a second ago and mentioned, we're not just saying, hey, clock in and out, done. We're also checking your GPS coordinates, making sure you're within the job site boundaries that you have set up, so your employees aren't clocking in at the McDonald's down the street. They're clocking in when they're actually at the job site. And it's preventing them if they happen to be in a place that they're not supposed to be. We understand that sometimes people hand their phones to a buddy and say, hey, go clock in for me. I'm going to be half an hour late. We'll take a picture. Make sure that it's them that's clocking in and not somebody else doing it. It's all giving you real-time visibility because our system is designed to have everything sync up the moment there's a data connection. And if you're in a place where you have Wi-Fi, you have data, your back office knows exactly what's happening to your crew at any time in the system. But also note that we do work offline. If you have a job site with no data connection, there's no Wi-Fi set up yet, it's out in a field far from the town, that's fine. You could still punch in and out from your smartphone, from wherever you are, and that time will be held. And as soon as they get to a data connection, to a Wi-Fi, we'll sync that up. So you'll have that live at that point. As the time gets approved, you set up who wants to look at it. And again, we talked about this earlier. You can have this go to foremen, to project engineers, to whoever in your company needs to be part of the approval process, because we want to make sure that the right cost codes were captured from the field, that if you had a specific union that you needed an override or a certified class code that you need to change, that can all be accomplished. And we all know that the people out in the field may not be putting that level of detail, so the approval process can help clarify that before it gets back to your Sage system. And we are not just talking about time, we're also talking about mileage. So if you need to capture that my delivery driver drove 50 miles today and he gets compensated for that, we can actually record their mileage in the system. If you have equipment that you are tracking, you want to know how many hours did it sit idle, how many hours was our operator actually running the equipment, what job site was it on. We can capture that information as well, and even track things down to like per diem, sick, vacation, PTO. It's all available within the system, so there's no type of time entry that you would miss when you're using our system. And I already talked about some of the integration pieces there, so I'll skip that and just go straight into the software, show you guys around in here. Now, I'm going to show you this from our web portal. This is the login I can do from any device that has an internet connection. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we do have apps for smartphones and for tablets, Apple or Android. And just for the limitations of a webinar on GoToMeeting, I'm not going to flip over to my smartphone for that reason. But everything we can do on the smartphone, we can do here, other than offline capability, which again, you can use the app to capture in the punch clocks in and out when you have no internet there. From a general standpoint, you can kind of see here, I'm logged in as an admin, so I've got a lot of stuff. Everything on the left-hand side of my screen here is general stuff that I'd be doing every day. Checking my timesheet, doing approvals, clocking in and out, running reports. Everything on the right is the administration stuff that's happening behind the scenes. Syncing in your jobs, your new employees, your general ledger accounts, your pay codes from Sage. These are all happening automatically. Now, from a user's standpoint, let's say you are a crew-based time that you want to capture. I can, as a foreman, let's say, pull up my tablet, pull up my smartphone, pull up my computer, And at the job site, I can see all of my employees that are out there, and I can see them right here across the top of my screen here as well for my crew. I can see all the active jobs I'm tracking. And right now I'm tracking 4 different jobs. And here are the different cost codes that are active on there. And I use the word active because as you move through a job, your cost codes change. You know what you're doing in the beginning is not the same as what you're doing in the end. So as I complete all of my structural form work, I can just delete that off the list. I don't have to keep seeing that week over week. As I get to later part of the job and I need to start adding new cost codes, such as steel decking, steel joists, and castings, I just add those to the list. And this list is predicated by default by what's in Sage. So it doesn't matter which version of Sage you have. If you're in Sage and you set up these cost codes for this job, that's going to be the ones that are going to be available from this list. If my crew changes a lot, which whose crew doesn't, you can just click on members here and you can add or remove people as necessary. So if John just left my crew for the day, I can drop him off and he can go to somebody else's crew, or if I need to add somebody else, I just plus them on here. Simple, easy interface. And if you're used to a spreadsheet or paper, this is a very simple transition for those foremen so that they're capturing that data. Now, obviously, once I have this group and people and I know what I'm doing here, it's time to start entering that time. Donald Black worked 8 hours doing excavate and backfill. Terry Brock did 4 hours doing that, and then he also worked 4 hours doing asphalt paving on the Northwest warehouse job. Tom Brooks, I'm tracking over here at the other job, and he's worked 4 hours doing 2 different cost codes at the Clackamas Office Park. And Theodore Dumont just did 8 hours here, 2 hours OT. We track it all. So that time is easily captured from a spreadsheet standpoint if you're a crew-based time entry. Now, if anything needs to be updated, hey, you know what? Terry Brock, I can click on his name here. I can see he's normally a certified laborer in my system, and that's the class that I'd be working for, and here's his unions and all that stuff. If I get word, hey, you know what, he wasn't just laboring on the excavating backfill, he was, 2 hours of that, he was working on equipment, I can come over here and actually capture that he was an equipment operator for a couple hours, and that will go back into Sage to make sure you're getting all your proper pay rates being given to them, plus any workers' comp that needs to change as well. We can capture that level of detail, including changing unions if need be as well. As I mentioned earlier, you could also capture mileage and other things like that. All you got to do is change our view here, and you can have your view show however you'd like. So if I want to also point out that Terry Brock gets $50 of per diem when he works on this job, or anyone working on this job gets per diem, I can go ahead and add that. I know that Jose worked, he drove 25 miles today, and I need to compensate him for that. I can put that in here. We, again, can capture the time for any type that you need, and that will all go through that approval process that we talked about earlier. Now, if people are into the concept of, hey, I want to actually clock in and out on a smartphone, on a tablet, we can do that. So I'm going to log out for a second here and log in as a different user. I'm going to log in as Stanley here. And Stanley is going to pull up his smartphone and clock in. Again, because of GoToMeeting, I'm going to be showing this on the web portal. This would be the same similar look and feel on your smartphone, slightly different screen size, things like that. But we have the punch clock. That punch clock will allow you to select the job that you're clocking into, the cost code that you're doing, and any other details that we want to include on there. It will geofence check you. So again, if you are at the job site, no problem whatsoever. But if I go to try to clock in at the McDonald's down the street, Starbucks, or even just do it from home and then drive to a job site, you're going to get an error message. It's going to stop you. It's going to prevent you from moving on. So this allows you to clock in and out. We validate that they are there. We can take a picture if you're using it on your smartphone. And throughout the day, if you need to change cost codes, we can move you to the different cost codes simply and easily. We can take you to a new job, whatever is required of it. And they can even put in their notes. And if you're on your smartphone or tablet, you can just talk right in there. So if I say left early due to whatever, I can put that in as a comment right there from my device that I'm on. At the end of the day, I go ahead and punch out. I'm all done with that. I can. And if you need to track breaks or lunches due to any regulatory needs or just for your own sake, you can capture those here too. You can even deprecate your time automatically. If I am in a position, as I mentioned, where I don't have a smartphone as an employee, or I refuse to do geo, turn on my geo, whatever it is, you can do a crew punch clock. So you can allow your foreman to pull up a list of all of the employees and clock them in manually and punch them in and out themselves. Or you can even turn this into what we call a kiosk mode, where you could set the tablet up to allow them to just pick up the tablet, type in their employee number, clock in and out from the tablet, and it stays at that screen. We've got you covered no matter what type of time that you need to capture. And again, that's all syncing to the timesheet here appropriately, so that if I need to validate where we're at on our time, you can. I'm going to go ahead and log back in as my payroll admin. And when I go and view up that timesheet now, you'll see the go log at the crew that I was just in, and you'll see all that time I did, including that tiny amount of time I just ran for Stanley on the concrete removal. It's all there, it's live, and it's available to me. Now, as a person who's approving this time, I can come into this timesheet from a detail level. Let's say I'm a project manager that I need to approve, or a superintendent. I might do that from this. I can just approve everyone, or I can approve line by line. If I'm a payroll admin, I'm probably going to be looking at the entire pay period, and I want to see what's happening from a high level. And this allows me to view my entire paycheck. Now, I've already approved sometimes, so I'm going to recall that and bring it back into the system. But as a payroll admin, I can see all my crews. I didn't show this earlier, but if you need employees to have their signatures be captured and have that with a little signature piece saying I didn't get hurt or injured and I took all my breaks and lunches, we can have that from them as well. They can do that from their smartphone, or you can hand them a tablet. But as a payroll admin, I can see all the notes. I can look at the details. I can see in this green or red whether or not people have had proper punch in and outs, or whether or not there was any errors. A red here would indicate they were outside the geofence, or they didn't clock out. I can run this with filters to say, show me everyone who's missing time, especially if you're doing clock in and out. Want to make sure nobody forgot to do that. You can break it down by job. I can even come over here. If I have rules that says after 40 hours of the week, I need to make sure that all of my cost code, or all of my overtime, has been allocated to the appropriate cost codes due to our union agreements or what have you. We can pull that. You have now the data right there in your hands, live, with everyone that's taking time in your company, so that you can appropriately validate it. And once all of your time is approved, and we can even promote it up to my level if I'm higher up than the people before me, and I know that, you know, Jimmy Dean is approved, his time's all good, I'm just going to promote it. I can approve all this time. I hit export, and then we get it over into Sage. No double entry. Everything's already mapped out so that what comes out of hh2 is identical to what goes in Sage. Your time is ready to go. And again, that's true for 100, 300, and Intacct, all three. And with Intacct as well, you can have this all collected from the top level down to all of your entities as well. So you don't have to have multiple sites for your different companies if you are running different companies there. Simple and easy process for you to export, import, or just push in, depending on your system. This time, because you're doing it all from here, now obviously Sage is your system of record, so going into Sage, you're going to run your normal reports for payroll as need be. But if you need to provide any labor detail reports, knowing how many hours were used on each job or cost code on a job, you have that ability here too. In fact, you can give this site access to your project managers, who might be the ones pulling this, and they can say, hey, I need to see everything for my job, all my time, maybe a certain cost code range, date range, you know, whatever that is. And then I can run this to Excel or PDF, whichever is appropriate needs. And I can just generate this report quickly to then say, hey, here's everything that happened on that job site. You see my employees, the days they worked, the cost codes they worked, the type of time, the amount of units, any notes. And then you can even get details on the clock in and out time, whether or not people took their breaks or lunches. It's all tracked within here. So you have that now at your fingertips. Again, can be run from anywhere because this is 100% web accessible software. So that's pretty high level on how this software is going to get your time from the field back into everyone's view so they can approve it. And then again, we'll push it directly back into Sage so that you have your time there. No loss of anything throughout that process there. Thank you for letting me do that little presentation here. I do know that we have some time to talk some questions that might have come up. So I don't know, Dennis or Bass team, if you have any questions that have come up through the Q&A section, we'd love to be able to answer them for you.
Sure. Thanks, Vance. That was fantastic. Yeah, so there was a couple of questions that come in. And if anyone else has questions, do please use that Q&A feature in the GoToWebinar control panel. One here, how does hh2 handle payroll when we're working with multiple unions on the same project?
Absolutely. So a couple things about unions are that your Sage accounting system, your payroll system in Sage, will handle 95% of all union changes typically. And that's because you assign in Sage what the union is on the job, what the locations are, or the unions are for the home local for a person. So if they're just going to a job that's assigned a specific union and that job always is a certain union, Sage is going to handle all that for you. If you need to validate what an employee's union is, you can always click on them in here to see their union. Now the scenario might come up though, that while the job it's a large enough job that it spans 2 unions. So if you have a scenario where you do need to have that captured to 2 different unions, let's say this 2 hours here on Terry Brock, normally, sorry, I didn't mean to click on that, I meant to click on his face. Normally he's on the CNC union here. I can actually come in here and say, you know what, this time was part of a different union, the non-standard union. This is the carpenters union in this case. And you could just select their time, pick the correct union, and it's going to move that over, and that's going to be what sends back into Sage. So from the field, you can change them if it's known from the field level. Now, obviously, if it's something that the back office takes care of, there's nothing wrong with you going into Sage and changing it in Sage before you post, but we can do it from the field if that's how you'd like to capture it. Thank you.
Okay, yep, I think that answers that. That's great, a lot of flexibility there. Another question that we get on almost every webinar that we do, what does typical implementation timeline look like for hh2?
Absolutely. So ours, let me answer that for you.
Yeah, you can go ahead, Vincent. Sorry.
And I don't have a slide for this, but our implementation process will, number one, guide you through the entire everything. We're not going to let you have a payroll run blind. So we will walk you through the whole process. Now, for a general time capture, let's say the average amount of time is about 30 days to get implemented, maybe 40 days, depending upon how busy a season it is at any given part. And that's usually only so many meetings. Each meeting is an hour to an hour and a half long. It's a very small amount of time to pull from your team because each person being taught through the implementation process is only having to be taught the parts they're going to use. A project manager team or the people entering time have 1 or 2 screens to look at. The persons approving it have 2 or 3 screens. Very small amount of stuff that each individual has to learn. And we can get that processed incredibly fast because of that, and because of our integration with Sage, where it syncs everything automatically. It means we don't have to recreate the wheel. We don't have to create all your employees. We don't have to create all your jobs. It's all synced day one from the system, pulls it in. And so realistically, all you're telling us now are your rules and how you want to capture time.
Okay, that's great. So another question that came in here, if changes are required to payroll time after payroll was processed, do the changes happen in hh2 or in payroll if we're using Sage 300 CRE?
Yeah, it depends on your reporting at the end of the day. Most of our customers are absolutely fine just changing it in Sage. If you If you just want to pop into Sage, do change payroll entries. If you're in Sage 300, that's where you would typically go in payroll tasks, change payroll entries. We have no problem with that because in most people's cases, that's going to be their end of day system of record. Now, the only time you'd really need to change it in our system is if you've gotten to the habit of doing a lot of reporting out of us and coming in here and saying point in time, here's so many hours we have to each cost code, and you need to keep that accurate. If that's the case and you are running a lot of reports out of our system, you can recall the time out of Sage, make the changes in ours, and then repost it. It's just up to you where you're doing your report outs for your project managers or for your job reporting.
All right, great. One other question here. Does hh2 integrate with Procore? And if so, how does that integration work?
So hh2 does integrate with Procore in a generic sense. We are a Procore partner for that. But for our system here, there's no requirement to connect to Procore because Procore is already connected to Sage and we're connected to Sage. So Procore will probably create your new projects that are coming into the system and what cost codes are appropriate, probably creating subcontracts, things of that nature. Those are all being fed into Sage, or at least they should be, assuming you have that integration set up. Because once it hits Sage, it comes into our system, it becomes a triangle. So Procore creates the new information, the new estimates, your new jobs. That goes into Sage. We pull it directly out of Sage, and therefore we see the same information.
And we are the ones that have that integration. We're the ones that built the integration between Sage and Procore. So just to add that.
Oh, fantastic. Even better then. So it's,
yes. Yeah. So if you're using the integration, you're already a customer of ours too.
Okay. I don't see any other questions coming in. So Dennis, Vincent, thanks again very much. Very, very informative session. If anyone has any questions or they'd like to see more about hh2, the contact information there is on the screen. You can also reach out to your BAS account manager. They'll be happy to set you up and provide you more information. So gentlemen, thanks very much. And thanks everyone for attending.
Have a good day.
Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Yes.